Everyone knows that crying loudly at a British funeral is considered inappropriate. But in my previous life, I still allowed my husband's adopted sister to do exactly that. Back then, my husband had a distant relative who was a British noble. When the man passed away, a lawyer contacted us and explained that my husband might be eligible to inherit his estate. We were invited to attend the funeral as part of the formal process. His adopted sister, Lily, insisted on coming along. She said she wanted to see the world, but in reality, she had a different plan. She believed that if she cried dramatically at the funeral, she could attract attention, earn sympathy, and maybe even impress the aristocrats present. I tried to stop her. British nobles value restraint, especially at funerals. A scene like that wouldn't earn favor, it would get us removed. I warned her that if things went wrong, we could lose everything. Lily burst into tears anyway, accusing me of looking down on her and believing she didn't belong among people of status. Overwhelmed by emotion, she stormed out of the venue. Outside, chaos broke out nearby, and she was caught in the aftermath of an unexpected incident that cost her life. I thought my husband would be heartbroken. Instead, he attended the funeral in silence, completed the procedures, and inherited the estate. 6 months later, on our anniversary, he took me to a snowy mountain under the excuse of a romantic photo shoot. Once we were there, he forced me into a sleeping bag and sealed it tightly, leaving me helpless in the cold. "If you hadn't made a fuss back then," he said coldly, "Lily wouldn't have run off." I lost consciousness as the snow fell around me, while he used the inheritance to climb his way to the top of the corporate world. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself back on the day of the funeral. "Nancy," Lily complained from the back seat of the car, her voice sharp and familiar. "Why won't you let me cry? The Duke had no children. What's wrong with showing a little emotion?" That was the moment I realized I had been given a second chance. Her eyes were already red, even though she hadn't begun her performance yet. She was playing the victim before we had even arrived. My mother-in-law pulled her into an embrace and shot me a warning look. "Look, a noble funeral is full of important people," she said. "What's wrong with a bit of crying? Someone might notice her kind heart." Encouraged, Lily stopped hiding her intentions. She checked her reflection in the mirror. "I've practiced my makeup for a month," she said proudly. "Today I look fragile and beautiful when I cry. Nancy is just jealous because I'm young. She's afraid I'll steal the spotlight." She had prepared meticulously, luxury salons, acting lessons, everything, all to cry convincingly in front of strangers. I laughed quietly. "You're attending a funeral, not a social event," I said. "Dress like that. Are you worried people won't notice what you're really doing?" Lily immediately broke into tears, accusing me of cruelty. She insisted she had researched the Duke's life, hired someone to write a eulogy, and memorized every word. My husband, Daniel, interrupted impatiently. "Nancy, what is wrong with you? Lily put so much effort into this. Maybe she'll make us look good. And you? What do you ever do except argue?" He had always been like that. He protected his adopted sister at all costs and assumed I was the problem, no matter how unreasonable her behavior was. In my past life, I had tried desperately to stop her. My father-in-law needed surgery, and the inheritance was our only hope. But Lily wouldn't listen, and my attempt to restrain her only made things worse. This time, I stayed silent. If she wanted to cry, I would let her. After all, if Daniel lost the inheritance this time, there would be plenty of real reasons to cry later. At the venue, a staff member politely explained the customs, including a reminder that loud displays of grief were not permitted. As soon as she left, Lily scoffed. "She's just jealous," Lily muttered. "Afraid I'll be noticed." My mother-in-law eagerly agreed. I smiled to myself. Lily truly believed the entire world revolved around her. When she accused me of interfering again, Daniel snapped at me. "Behave yourself. Important guests are attending today. If you ruin this, I won't forgive you." The mention of nobility only fueled Lily's excitement. My mother-in-law even threatened divorce if I caused trouble. I found it absurd. Did they really think Lily stood a chance? As guests arrived, Lily went from person to person, greeting them in awkward English, clinging to arms, feigning weakness. Eventually, she asked me to fetch something from the car. The moment I sat down, the doors locked. Lily stared at me through the window, her expression smug. "You're afraid I'll surpass you," she said. Daniel stood by silently as I demanded to be let out. He dismissed me and walked away, telling me to stop competing with his sister. For the first time, I felt nothing but clarity. "You can have him," I murmured. "I don't want him anymore." Inside the hall, Lily's performance escalated. What began as quiet sobbing soon turned into disruptive wailing. Guests stared, uncomfortable. She mistook their shock for admiration. When someone gently tried to intervene, she snapped back, accusing them of cruelty and jealousy. Even a senior religious figure's attempt to restore order was met with hostility. She believed she was winning. On the second floor, safely escorted by someone who understood the situation, I watched as Lily, my mother-in-law, and Daniel embarrassed themselves further. They were too busy performing to notice the noble host on the balcony, his expression darkening with anger. The real consequences were about to begin. The noble host didn't explode right away. That was the first thing I noticed. How controlled his anger was. He didn't shout. He didn't wave his arms. He simply lifted one hand, palm down, and the people near him immediately went still, as if the air itself had been ordered to behave. The man standing beside me on the second floor, my unexpected escort, leaned slightly closer. "Don't move," he murmured. "And don't speak to them if they approach you. Not yet." His accent was crisp. His suit was immaculate. He wasn't staff, not exactly, but he moved through the building like he belonged to its bones. Below, Lily's wailing rose again, the sound bouncing off stone and stained glass, ripping through the silence like a blade. A few guests flinched. One woman pressed her lips together so hard they nearly disappeared. Another man's jaw flexed once, twice, as if he were counting to 10. Lily took all of it as applause. She dabbed at the corners of her eyes dramatically, then let out a louder sob, throwing her shoulders forward as if grief had physically attacked her. My mother-in-law joined in, adding an ugly, high-pitched cry that didn't sound like mourning so much as an argument with the universe. Daniel stood between them, his face pinched with frustration, yet he still didn't stop them. He only looked around like a man desperate for someone else to blame. Then the host stepped forward onto the balcony. He was older than I expected. Not elderly, but seasoned, silver at the temples, posture too straight to be natural, the kind of elegance that didn't come from trying. He looked down at the hall with the calm of someone who had spent his life being obeyed. His eyes landed on Lily. They didn't narrow. They didn't widen. They simply hardened, like a door closing. A man in formal black, a senior attendant maybe, approached him and spoke quietly. The host listened without turning his head, then answered in a low sentence I couldn't hear. Immediately, movement rippled through the room. 2 security staff appeared at the edge of the aisle. Not bulky, not aggressive, just present, purposeful, and utterly unamused. One of them approached Lily first. "Madam," he said, voice firm but polite, "you must lower your voice." Lily blinked at him, mascara trembling in perfect theatrical streaks. She turned her face slightly, as if to give the nearest group a better angle of her tears. "I'm grieving," she said, her broken English suddenly more dramatic than accurate. "Why are you attacking me for having a heart?" The guard didn't react to her performance. "This is a solemn service," he repeated. "If you cannot follow the rules, you will be asked to leave." Lily looked around, waiting for someone to defend her. My mother-in-law did it instantly. "She's foreign," she snapped. "She doesn't understand. You can't humiliate her." Another guard approached my mother-in-law. "Madam, you too?" And then Lily did the exact thing she always did when she felt cornered. She escalated. She clutched her chest again, swayed dramatically, and let out a cry loud enough to turn every head in the building. Daniel jolted. Not because he finally understood the consequences, but because he thought someone would think Lily was having a medical emergency, and that it would make them look sympathetic. He reached toward her. "Lily." But Lily grabbed his sleeve and raised her voice even higher. "I came here with sincerity," she sobbed, practically shouting. "And I'm being bullied because I'm not one of you." People didn't look moved. They looked disgusted. That was the difference between my past life and this one. Before, I had panicked and tried to stop her, which made her look like the victim of an evil sister-in-law. Now, with me absent from the scene, there was no convenient villain. There was only Lily. And Lily, unrestrained, was making sure everyone saw exactly who she was. On the balcony, the host lifted his hand again. The priest paused mid-sentence and stepped back, as if receiving a silent instruction. The host spoke. This time his voice carried. "Remove them." It was only 2 words. And they landed like a verdict. The guards moved in. Lily stared, stunned, as if reality had broken the script she had memorized. "What?" "No," she snapped, wiping at her tears with theatrical outrage. "You can't. This is, my brother is family." Daniel finally reacted, stepping forward. "Wait," he said hurriedly. "There's been a misunderstanding. We were invited." The guard held up a hand. "Sir, please cooperate." "My father," Daniel started and then stopped himself, remembering he'd never told these people anything about his father's surgery. He tried a new angle. We're related. The Duke, he had no children. I'm here for the inheritance procedure. The word inheritance made several guests turn their heads sharply. That alone was enough to turn the mood colder. Because now Lily wasn't just disrespectful. She was greedy. And she had put on a show in front of a coffin for money. The guards began to escort them toward the doors. Lily yanked her arm away. Don't touch me. The guard didn't tighten his grip. He didn't need to. He simply kept walking, and Lily, still terrified of looking weak, stumbled after him to avoid being dragged. My mother-in-law tried to snatch Lily back. This is discrimination. Daniel's face went white. Stop, please. He looked around desperately, scanning faces for sympathy. Then his eyes landed on the second floor. On me. For a second, he looked relieved. Like he had found the one person he could throw under the bus. Nancy, he shouted. The sound echoed upward. The escort beside me shifted slightly, positioning himself between Daniel's line of sight and my body, as if he could block even a voice. Daniel pushed forward against the guards. She did this. She set us up. She locked herself in the car and caused trouble. And that was when the noble host finally looked up. Not at Daniel. At me. His gaze pinned me in place. Not hostile, not friendly, just assessing. The escort beside me leaned closer again. Do exactly what I say, he murmured. When he addresses you, you answer politely. Nothing else. I took a slow breath. In my past life, I would have been shaking. This life, I felt calm. Because for the first time, I wasn't trying to protect people who would happily destroy me. I was protecting myself. The escort guided me toward a doorway on the second floor that led into a smaller side corridor. We moved quietly, away from the balcony's edge, into a private area where the noise from below became muffled. Two people were waiting. One was a woman in a dark suit with a folder tucked under her arm. Professional, sharp-eyed, not the type to tolerate nonsense. The other was an older man with a silver tie pin and a face like carved stone. The older man looked at me for a long moment. Then he spoke, calm and precise. You are Mrs. Carter? Hearing Daniel's surname in that voice made my stomach tighten. But I kept my expression neutral. Yes, I said. I'm Nancy Carter. The woman with the folder stepped forward. I'm Miss Hargreaves, legal counsel for the estate. The escort, my rescuer, finally introduced himself with a slight nod. Oliver Ashford, he said. I oversee protocol and guest conduct for the family. So that was what he was. Not just staff. A gatekeeper. The older man studied me again. You were found locked in a vehicle on the property. Yes, I said. I was asked to retrieve an item from the car. The doors locked behind me. I believe it was intentional. Miss Hargreaves's eyes flicked up. By whom? I didn't rush. I didn't accuse emotionally. I simply told the truth like it was paperwork. My husband's adopted sister, I said. Lily. And his mother. My husband didn't lock the door, but he refused to let me out. A beat of silence. Then Oliver's expression changed, subtly but unmistakably. Disgust, restrained. The older man exhaled through his nose. And you did not cause any disturbance, he said. No. Iraplia. I did not. Miss Hargreaves opened her folder. Your husband claims that you attempted to sabotage their presence here. I met her gaze. He can claim whatever he wants. There are cameras, I assume. Oliver nodded once. There are. Then you'll see, I said, that I was removed from the hall without creating a scene. You'll also see that I was confined to a vehicle against my will. The older man held my gaze a moment longer. Then unexpectedly he said, good. The word startled me. He didn't mean good, as in he was pleased I suffered. He meant good as in I hadn't lied. He meant good, as in I had shown restraint in a place built on it. He turned to Miss Hargreaves. Proceed. She nodded and looked at me again. Mrs. Carter, I'm going to be direct. The Duke's estate is governed by a trust. Eligibility is not purely based on blood. It also involves conduct. I didn't move. Your husband was invited because he may be a qualifying relative, she continued. But the trust allows discretion. The Duke made it very clear he did not want opportunists downstairs. I heard another burst of Lily's voice, now outside, screaming that this was unfair. Oliver's lips tightened. Miss Hargreaves went on. The disturbance today has already been documented. The host has grounds to bar Mr. Carter from further proceedings. My heart didn't leap with joy. It simply settled into a cold, clean certainty. Because Daniel had been counting on this money the same way he counted on me. As something he could use, discard, and still feel entitled to. I kept my tone steady. What happens next? Miss Hargreaves's eyes narrowed slightly, like she respected the question. We verify claims, she said. We review footage. We evaluate whether any invitee's actions violated the estate's terms. If Mr. Carter is disqualified, the trust moves to the next eligible party. And if there isn't one? I asked. The older man's gaze sharpened. There is always one, he said softly, even if it is the foundation. I understood immediately. If Daniel didn't inherit, the money wouldn't magically become ours anyway. It could go to a charity, a preservation fund, something the Duke chose to protect his legacy from greedy hands. Miss Hargreaves glanced at Oliver, then back to me. There is also another matter. Your confinement in that vehicle could be considered unlawful. We have security. We can involve police if you wish. The word police would have terrified me in my past life. Now it felt like a tool. I looked at my hands and realized they were steady. Yes, I said. I would like that documented. Oliver nodded once, approval again. Miss Hargreaves made a note. And your marriage? That made me look up. She didn't ask it like gossip. She asked it like strategy. Do you intend to remain legally bound to a man who willingly allowed you to be locked in a car for his sister's performance? The question wasn't cruel. It was clinical. It was a door being opened. I heard Daniel's voice again in my head. The way he had called me useless, jealous, a problem. I thought of the sleeping bag in the snow. I thought of how easily he had justified it to himself. And in this life, before the future could happen again, I made the decision I should have made long ago. No, I said. The older man nodded like he'd expected that answer. Miss Hargreaves turned to Oliver. Escort Mrs. Carter to a private waiting room. Keep her separate from the others. Oliver inclined his head. Of course. Then Miss Hargreaves looked back at me. Mrs. Carter, if you are willing, I would like you to provide a statement on record. Calmly. Precisely. Everything you know about their intent today. I understood what she was really asking. She wasn't only documenting the car. She was documenting Lily's plan. The calculated sobs, the rehearsed eulogy, the effort to harvest sympathy and attention. All of it proved motive. Opportunism. I nodded. I can do that. Oliver guided me down a quiet corridor into a smaller room furnished like a museum lounge. Dark wood, soft chairs, no warmth for comfort, only enough for dignity. A security officer took my name and quietly asked if I needed water. I said yes. My throat was dry, but my mind was clear. Minutes later, through the window, I saw Daniel outside, pacing furiously near the front steps. Lily was still half crying, half yelling, mascara streaks now ugly instead of delicate. My mother-in-law pointed at the building like she wanted to burn it down with her anger. Then Daniel turned. He saw the window. He saw me inside. And his face twisted, not with guilt, but with rage that I had survived. He marched toward the entrance like a man storming into a courtroom without a lawyer. A guard intercepted him. Daniel argued. The guard didn't move. Daniel's voice rose. His hands gestured wildly. Lily leaned in, adding her own shrill commentary, then suddenly burst into loud sobbing again, as if she thought tears could unlock doors. It was almost funny. Almost. Because I knew how dangerous Daniel could be when he realized he was losing control. The door to my room opened quietly. Miss Hargreaves stepped in, sat across from me, and placed a recorder on the table. Whenever you're ready, she said. I told her everything. About Lily's obsession with being noticed. About the acting classes. About the makeup. About her intention to meet a rich suitor at a funeral. About Daniel's threats. About the car. I didn't dramatize. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I simply laid down facts, one after another like bricks. When I finished, Miss Hargreaves clicked off the recorder. She studied me for a moment. Then she said, "You understand what this means?" I nodded. "Daniel will blame me." "He already tried," she replied. "But the estate has footage. And frankly, your composure helps." She stood. "Stay here. Do not engage with them. If he attempts to contact you, do not respond. Let us handle it." After she left, I sat back and stared at the glass of water in my hands. In my past life, this had been the moment where everything began to slip. Where Lily's death made Daniel turn his grief into a weapon. Where I became the scapegoat. In this life, Lily was alive. And Daniel was still dangerous. But now I had something I hadn't had before. Witnesses. Authority. and a legal team that cared less about Daniel's feelings than about the Duke's legacy. An hour later, Oliver returned. His expression was as controlled as ever, but there was a faint tightness at the corner of his mouth. "It's done," he said. My heart tightened. "What is?" He held out a document. 1 page, crisp paper, heavy letterhead. Miss Hargreaves's signature at the bottom. "Mr. Carter has been formally barred from the estate proceedings," Oliver said. "Effective immediately." I let out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. "And the inheritance?" I asked. Oliver didn't answer immediately. He chose his words carefully. "The trust will move forward," he said. "Without him." My pulse thudded. "So he gets nothing?" "Correct." The quiet finality of it made my chest ache. Not because I mourned Daniel, but because I could see, so clearly, how the future would change. No inheritance meant no instant CEO rise. No mountain photo shoot. No smug power. But Daniel was not the kind of man who accepted consequences. He was the kind of man who created them for other people. Oliver's voice lowered slightly. "Miss Hargreaves also filed a report regarding your confinement. Local authorities have been notified." I nodded, numb with relief and adrenaline. "And you," Oliver added, "have been offered safe transport to your hotel. With security." I looked up. "What about my passport? My belongings? They're with Daniel." Oliver's eyes flicked with something like irritation. "We can retrieve essentials. But do not approach him yourself." I nodded again. Outside, Daniel's shouting rose, muffled through the walls. Then stopped abruptly. A different voice cut in, firm, authoritative. "Police." I stood slowly and walked to the window. Daniel was speaking now in a calmer tone, hands raised in false innocence. Lily stood behind him crying again, this time real fear slipping into her voice because authority didn't care about her performance. My mother-in-law looked furious, but even she knew when to shut up. I watched as an officer gestured toward the car. Then to Daniel. Then to Lily. Questions. Answers. Footage would come next. And for the first time, I saw something I had never seen on Daniel's face before. Not anger. Not contempt. Fear. Oliver stepped beside me, gaze following mine. "They believed they were important," he said quietly. "People like that always do." I didn't respond, because I wasn't interested in what they believed anymore. I was interested in what I could prove. By evening, I was back at the hotel with an envelope containing temporary documentation and a written statement acknowledging the incident. Oliver's security had retrieved my passport from the luggage. Daniel had tried to refuse, but refusal didn't hold up when a legal representative and police officer were standing there. Daniel called. Of course he did. Over and over. I didn't answer. Then the messages began. "Nancy, what did you do? Pick up. We need to talk. You ruined everything. You always ruin everything." Then, as if he remembered he needed leverage, the tone changed. "Please. My dad's surgery. You know we need that money." I stared at the screen. In my past life, that line would have hooked me. It would have made me feel guilty. It would have made me question myself. This time, I typed one sentence and sent it without hesitation. "Tell your mother to cry louder. Maybe the world will pay attention." Then I blocked his number. I sat on the edge of the bed, hands resting on my knees, and felt something strange settle inside me. Not happiness. Not revenge. Relief. Because for the first time, the story wasn't being written by Daniel's cruelty or Lily's theatrics. It was being written by consequences. And I was finally on the side of them. The next morning, Miss Hargreaves called. Her voice was brisk, efficient. "Mrs. Carter, the trust committee will not revisit its decision," she said. "Mr. Carter is disqualified. The estate will transfer to the Duke's designated foundation." I closed my eyes. So the money wouldn't come to me. But it also wouldn't go to Daniel. That was enough. "There is one more matter," she continued. "If you intend to file for divorce, we can connect you to counsel here. Additionally, given the incident, you may be eligible for protective measures. You were unlawfully confined. There may be grounds for further action." Further action. I repeated the words silently. In my past life, I had died with no action at all. Just a story nobody believed, buried under someone else's narrative. In this life, there were documents. Records. People who had seen the truth with their own eyes. "Yes," I said. "Connect me." After the call, I stood at the window and looked out at the gray English sky. Somewhere out there, Daniel was scrambling. Trying to fix what couldn't be fixed. Trying to blame what couldn't be blamed. trying to punish me for refusing to be his shield. And I knew, absolutely knew, that he would try again. Maybe not today. Maybe not in this country. But men like him didn't let go. They tightened their grip until it snapped. I turned away from the window, picked up my coat, and took a deep breath. If Daniel wanted a war, he could have it. But this time, I wasn't walking into it blind. This time, I was already 3 moves ahead. And unlike Lily, I didn't need to cry to get attention. I only needed to let Daniel keep talking. Because sooner or later, a man like him always confessed, if not with words, then with actions. And I was finally ready to document every single one.